Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick.
I'm Ian.
Today we're going way back to 1993. We're going to talk about some great albums that came out 30 years ago. There's a bunch of links down below. Make sure you go check them out. There's links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music weekly playlist that we put together, and also the Patreon page. Make sure you go check all that out. Of course, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give us the old thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time we release new episodes. So 1993 was a really interesting time in music. You know, we still had a lot of the stuff, or a lot of those bands from the late 80s were still putting out newer music or new music. But you also still had that grunge scene that was really kind of changing in 1993. I'd say it's probably the very tail end of grunge, where you had so you had grunge dying off, and you had this like big alternative scene that was really kind of taking over music at the time. So it was, like I said, a really interesting time in rock music. You also had a lot of great rap, a lot of great R&B. There was so much stuff going on musically in 1993. It was just a great year, I think, for music overall.
Yeah.
But we do have 7 albums we're going to talk about today. The first one, this came out back in August 24th. And it's kind of like, I guess it's probably one of those, outside the box albums. I think a lot of people
easy to forget about, but then when you see it, you're like, oh yeah.
And it's actually a really good album from beginning to end. But it's Kerosene Hat by Cracker. Low is the first track on this album, and of course was the big track off of this. It's probably people probably consider Cracker one of those 90s one-hit wonder bands. That one track is definitely the one thing that everyone remembers from them. But this is an album that, like I said, beginning to end, there's so much more on this album than just that one track. It's and the funny thing was, this is one of the albums I forgot even existed until Music on Vinyl repressed it several years ago. But it's a great album.
So one that I went to when I made my list was Utero by Nirvana. Came out September 21st, 93. I don't know. I this is probably a controversial pick, not just in rock music, but in Nirvana music, because I don't know how. I think there's always been kind of a debate whether or not Nevermind or this were the better of their albums.
I think a lot of people are probably picking Utero as the best album.
I mean, just because it's a progression. Nirvana, Nevermind was like, that was their beginning. Even though it wasn't their first album, it was like their beginning.
There's definitely a progression from Bleach to Nevermind to Incesticide to Utero, even though Incesticide was
pretty much a B-side.
Well, I mean, it was a B-side album.
Yeah, but I think this is kind of an indication of where Nirvana was probably going forward, had circumstances not been what they were.
Yeah.
So and of course,
had Courtney not killed Kurt, is what you're trying to say?
Well, I didn't want to say it out loud. I was afraid of liability in terms of
allegedly.
Allegedly, okay, we'll say allegedly. Obviously, Heart Shaped Box I think was the first single off this. It was the first one that I remember hearing.
Yeah.
But I was super excited about the album anyway. Was there other? Did they have other hits off?
Yeah, there was a couple of big ones off of here. I think Heart Shaped Box was definitely the biggest one, but Dumb was I don't remember if Dumb was a single or not. Yeah. I think Penny Royalty was. All Apologies. It's an album that there's probably only maybe 1 or 2 skippable tracks for me.
Yeah,
on there.
I don't know. All Apologies for sure, but I think even like some of the other tracks were more singles off of. Obviously off this album, but they were singles in the unplugged version.
Yes.
More than
off the album.
They were off this album.
So going all the way to the end of the year, November 23rd, it was there was a couple couple of great albums that came out that day, but one that really kind of stuck out to me is Doggystyle by Snoop Dogg. Of course, he got his big break in 1992 on The Chronic. The Chronic was a huge album, really blew up his career, and Doggystyle really kind of continued that trend. Just a great album from beginning to end. I would say Gin and Juice is probably my favorite track on here.
It's the first one I remember hearing because the video was on TV all the time. I
will say that a vast majority of these song titles I can't say on YouTube, so I will say it's a great album. I wanted to kind of throw something else out there that was just not non-rock related because there was so many great albums outside of rock that were released in the early part of the 90s. I will say that this is definitely, I'd say in the first 5 years, the first half of the 90s, this and The Chronic, I think are definitely my 2 favorite rap albums.
So going non-chronologically, he went to the end of the year. I'm going to the closer to the beginning, into the spring, April 16th of 93. And it's Save His Soul by Blues Traveler. Now, this is an album that gets forgotten about by a lot of people, and
including me.
Yeah. I don't think it should. I think it's a hugely underrated album in their catalog, but the problem is that it is followed up by 4, which is a fantastic album.
It's a huge album.
And it is the follow-up to their second album, Travelers and Thieves, which is a fan favorite. So it's kind of like it gets lost in its own grouping.
Because it's bookended by two
better... Well, I wouldn't say they're better albums, because
they're just different albums.
They're very different albums. And honestly, I think the stuff that they were doing on this album is really what led to 4 being a good album, such an iconic album.
You could hear the progression
Absolutely.
from this album to what's on 4. I remember having this on cassette back in the day.
And honestly, it was an album that it took me a long time to appreciate in their catalog too. So I get why it was like that. But having gone and listened to it, well, obviously a long time ago when I had it on CD. When I started to truly appreciate it, I found that there were songs on this that I thought were even slightly better than some of the songs on 4.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but some of them. So, in fact, one of my favorite Blues Traveler songs is on this album is Defense and Desire. It's one of my favorite Blues Traveler songs.
So when I started putting my list together or looking at albums released in 1993, this next one was one that instantly came to mind. Same with In Utero, one of those big staple albums from that year that I remember. But this one came out July 20th. It is Candlebox's self-titled debut album. Of course, everyone knows there's what You was with the one big track on here. Far Behind was the other big track. I think those were like the 2 huge singles off here. I will say that their Happy Pills, which I think was the album that came out after this, I think is a better album overall. But this was the album that I listened to nonstop for a good chunk of at least like that part of that summer in '93,
right.
maybe towards the end of the year.
You was on MTV all the time, so it was easy to be reminded. Oh yeah, I need to listen to that. Yeah,
and I think they were really huge in '94 because of Woodstock also.
Right.
Their performance at Woodstock was fantastic, but this is another one of those albums. Like I said, if you only know those 2 tracks, definitely go back and listen to it because it is a great album from beginning to end. I will say that the track Far Behind is actually about Andy Wood, the lead singer of Mother Love Bone. But because him and the lead singer of Candlebox were huge friends when they were growing up and kind of came up together in that Pacific Northwest scene. But it's a great album.
So this next one will come as no surprise to anyone who's been watching this channel for any amount of time. But August and Everything After came out September 14th, 93.
It should have come out in August.
Yeah, well, I guess it was only off by 2 weeks. So, Counting Crows is my second favorite band of all time, and this is not my favorite of their albums, but obviously this is the one that started everything.
Yeah.
So, there isn't anything I could say about this that hasn't been said a bunch of times on this channel.
Yeah. Because it's an album that both of us love. So.
Right. But I think this honestly was probably the album that got me moving towards a slightly different way of thinking about music, honestly. Rock music is specifically. So, I don't know. It's just, like I said, there isn't much I can say that I haven't
For
already
me,
said.
it was like, that was like the bridge from like grunge, because primarily before that I was listening to
heavier stuff,
and that was like the bridge to a different kind of like alternative rock in the mid part of the 90s.
Yeah, that's probably for me too. Kind of getting away from that. I wouldn't say like, well, I was a big metal guy too, so be up to this point. So I was listening to Sabbath and Metallica and stuff like that. This was kind of probably the softest album I'd owned since I was a little kid, and
but it's a great album.
Yeah, it's probably in the top. It should be in the top 50 of all time, but it's definitely it's probably my top 25 of all time.
Yeah. So the last one on the list is another one of those staple albums that probably most people I think would put on a list of best albums from 1993.
Probably best of the 90s.
Yeah,
maybe.
probably.
Yeah.
But it came out July 27th. Of course, that is Siamese Dream by Smashing Pumpkins. We were just talking before we started recording. It's this isn't even one of my favorite Smashing Pumpkins albums. It is a great one, though. Mm-hmm. I think definitely like their first, 3 studio albums plus Pisces is Scary, all 4 of them are just fantastic albums. This is definitely, I would probably put Melancholy over this. I would definitely put Pisces is Scary over this. And then this and Gish are kind of in there at the bottom. But all four of them are all just incredible albums. Today was, of course, the huge hit off of this album. But like with everything else we talked about, there's so many more, so much more than just that, just the big hits on this album.
I think really what happens is that, and this is historically speaking, the hits are what are put out to kind of like tease and draw people in.
Yeah.
But they a lot of times tend to overshadow everything else that's on the album.
Yeah.
And in many cases, everything else that's on the album is what is better. It's what they're trying to get you to listen to. So I mean that's why you're always going to hear that from us. Check out the whole album.
Oh, of course. And it's just I would probably put this in I think it's definitely my top 25 90s album. It's just a great album.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all we got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking this show out. Make sure you drop us a comment down below. Let us know what some of your favorite 1993 albums are, because there's just a ton of them. We could have kept going on. I think I probably had 15 on my list I could have picked from.
Yeah, this could have been an hour and a half, 2 hour video.
Absolutely. But let us know what some of your favorites are. Of course, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give us a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. And that's all we got. Until next time.
Talk to y'all later.
Keep on spinning. Peace.